Hello and welcome to SaltWire today for Monday, December 5th. I'm your host, Kate Walker. The cost of groceries has been on the mind of many Canadians, watching those prices climb the same way as things like rent and gas. And it's projected to continue into the new year. In Canada's Food Price Report 2023, consumers are expected to see food prices rise between 5 and 7%. Products like vegetables, dairy, and meat are expected to climb the most. Factors like inflation and supply chain issues during the pandemic have driven up those prices. Putting things in perspective, for an average family of 4, with a man 31 to 50, a woman 31 to 50, a girl 9 to 13, and a boy 14 to 18, the report forecasts they will spend over $16,000 per year on food. That's an increase of over $1,000 from 2022. Canada's Food Price Report 2023 suggests people practice what they call shelfflation, buying frozen vegetables and or freezing vegetables that don't have the same shelf life as they used to. And speaking of high prices, more expensive fuel has driven up the cost of Christmas trees. The Harringtons, 3 generations now, have set up their tree lot on the same Rockingham property next to St. Peter's Anglican Church every year. They charge about $60 for a 6 to 8 foot tree, up about 10% from last year, which doesn't begin to cover the higher fuel costs for the tractor trailer that brings the trees in from Digby County. They're hoping to keep up with sales from last year, which could be a hard year to top.
We had quite a upswing during COVID when nobody was leaving the city and people were traveling for Christmas. So, that was a pretty big spike that we never see again. But, the business continues to stay very strong for us. We've been here, been very consistent.
The family also sells wreaths, which are bought wholesale and decorated by Chris's wife. Electric scooters are becoming more and more popular in HRM. While changes were made to the Motor Vehicle Act in the spring, setting some rules around e-scooters, HRM is still working on a bylaw. They're also figuring out an approach to ride-sharing rentals. SaltWire's Jen Taplin has that story.
At a recent meeting of the Active Transportation Advisory Committee, members talked about what restrictions they would like HRM to include in a bylaw for e-scooters. The chair of the committee suggested changes like reducing the speed limit from 32 kilometers an hour and restricting where they can park. Stephen MacArthur, owner of Move Scooters, said there are some kinks to work out, but e-scooters help people get to where they're going without getting in a car.
We're trying to provide a means of travel and convenience for HRM so people can move freely as they want throughout the city. If somebody misses their bus, they need to go that extra mile. Maybe their car is broke down. Maybe, they just want to have fun.
MacArthur's fleet of 80 e-scooters are now packed away for the season. Perhaps when the season starts again in the spring, HRM will have its bylaw in place. In Halifax, I'm Jen Taplin for the SaltWire Network.
The commercial lobster fishing season kicked off in southwestern Nova Scotia this morning after a week-long delay due to the weather. More than 4,000 fishers were aboard hundreds of boats that left their ports on dumping day. This year, there is more uncertainty tied to the season as the industry faces lower shore prices coupled with much higher costs for expenses. SaltWire's Tina Camo has more from Yarmouth.
Following a week-long delay due to weather, the LFA 34 commercial lobster fishing season in southwestern Nova Scotia got underway the morning of December 5th. The season, which is normally supposed to open on the last Monday of November, opened instead on the first Monday of December due to wind last week that kept the fleets tied up. Fishing crews were blessed with light winds on the opening day of the season, which is also known as dumping day. Boats loaded with traps and gear were permitted to leave their ports at 6 a.m. to head to the fishing grounds to dump, aka set, their gear at sea. Fishers are permitted to begin hauling their traps at 1 minute past midnight. Day 2 of the season, when the catches will start to be hauled, called for light winds too. It's unknown what this lobster season will hold in store for crews, but it is known the season will come with challenges. Compared to last season, there will be lower shore prices paid to fishers for their catches, while at the same time, fishing captains and crews are facing higher expenses such as fuel, bait, and more. The economy of southwestern Nova Scotia relies heavily on the lobster industry, which is the biggest employer of the region. Last year, the landed value of Lobster and LFA 34 was $401.7 million. That is money that gets recirculated in the economy. While the hope is still for a prosperous season, above all, the hope is for a safe season. While it's important to bring home catches, it's more important for the crews to come home too. This is Tina Camo, reporting from Southwestern Nova Scotia for SaltWire Network.
Time now for a glimpse of today's Thinking Out Loud with Sheldon McLeod. Today, Sheldon is speaking with Health Minister Michelle Thompson about a new doctor recruitment plan.
What can you tell me about that plan? How is that? Where do you see the potential in that plan, and how will it work?
So I think there's lots of potential. So there's a few things. We heard on the tour. So when we formed government, within 2 weeks, we went out on a tour across the province from Neils Harbor down to Yarmouth and all points in between to hear directly from healthcare workers. And we did hear from people that our registering process was complicated and it sometimes excluded people. And so we've been working really hard, particularly with the colleges in Nova Scotia, nurses and physicians, to understand where we can streamline those opportunities. So we have folks who were born, raised, and educated in other countries, right, for their medical training. But we also have a pool of people who are Nova Scotians who actually have been internationally educated as well and need residency programs in order to come home.
And for Sheldon's full conversation, head to the opinion section of saltwire.com. Time now for the Atlantic Sports Wire, presented by Scott Squires.
Brings it up on the sideline. Time now for part two of my conversation with Winnipeg, Manitoba's Caitlin Hollywood. Caitlin was in Nova Scotia recently for the East Coast Elite Soccer Showcase. But as I found out, soccer isn't the only sport that Caitlin is interested in. I had a chance to meet your dad. His name is Scott also. He's a Blue Bombers fan, Winnipeg Blue Bombers fan, and I saw some pictures of you at the game with him at the Grey Cup. How does all of that fit into your life?
Yes, I was raised on soccer, but I was raised on football. Like, my parents have had season tickets for as long as I can remember. Our jerseys when we were younger, because there's three of us, it's me, my brother, and my sister. It had Little Hollywood, Littler Hollywood, and Littlest Hollywood. So we still have our jerseys. They don't fit us because we were like young. But yeah, like us three kids were raised on football.
Your dad, when I spoke to him on the weekend, he was still pretty heartbroken about the Argonauts beating the Blue Bombers in the Grey Cup. How is he doing now? Is he recovering from the Blue Bombers' loss?
I think slowly. I think very, very, very slowly. I think maybe in the next years, if we win, it might ease that off a little bit. But we were really hoping for a win.
Caitlin hopes to be back in Nova Scotia to participate in the 2023 North American Indigenous Games. In Halifax, I'm Scott Squires for the Atlantic Sports Wire.
Thank you, Scott. On to weather now to see what's coming up in the forecast. We're going to check in now with our weather specialist, Alistair Alders.
Thanks, Kate. Well, it was a bright start to the week here in HRM. Now, this will probably be the brightest day of the upcoming week, as we will have a blocking pattern developing and a trough of low pressure that will stall over the region. This evening, though it will be clear, we'll see the temperature near -2. Now, the temperature does dip a bit further overnight, but we rise as temperatures turn over to the south. So we start the morning near the freezing mark on Tuesday, with mainly sunny skies and a mix of sun and cloud heading into the afternoon on Tuesday, with the temperature heading up to 6 degrees. So that is certainly above normal. We have a frontal trough that will start to approach from the west as we head into our Wednesday. So patchy showers develop ahead of it on Wednesday, and then steadier bands of rain Wednesday night into Thursday. And that rain will continue throughout the day on Thursday, clearing out later in the day on Friday. Looks like about 20 to 40 millimeters of rain for us here in Halifax, given that it will be stalled over the region. But the wind won't be as significant as the last few systems, gusts generally 30 up to 50 kilometers per hour. Kate.
Thank you, Alistair. That's all for now. For more extended video and full online articles, stay tuned to saltwire.com. And you can find us on Instagram and Twitter at SaltWire Today. I'm your host, Kate Walker. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you back here tomorrow.